They weigh 41 kilograms each. Not the boots alone, the boots and the powered frame fused to them, the kinetic battery seated in the heel, the navigation core wired through the sole. 41 kilograms of carbon laminate plating, ceremonial leather treated against rot, and a stride mechanism designed to outlast the man who wore it. The stride is precisely 72 centimeters. The cadence is 112 steps per minute. The boots have been walking without pause, without deviation, without rest, for 61 standard years. They are walking right now. As I dictate this account, somewhere on the eastern hemisphere of the tomb world Keswick 9, on the cracked basalt of what was once a parade ground, in the long blue light of a sun the man inside them never lived to see, the boots are walking. The sound they make on dead soil is a soft double tap. Heel, then toe, heel, then toe. They have made this sound, by my Confederation's estimation, 4,200,000,000 times. They will make it again before I finish this sentence. The man inside them is named Marcus Holloway. He has been dead since the 7th of 3rd month in the year my species calls cycle 4419. He has not stopped walking since the moment they put him in the ground. He is, by some considerable margin, the most patient soldier in the galaxy. And he is, by every measure my people understand, already long dead. Every salvage crew that ever passed within 10 light years of Keswick 9 dreamed of recovering those boots. Almost none of them ever did. Of the ones who tried, fewer than half came home. Of the ones who came home, none came home with the boots. This is the story of the old general, the human officer who was buried in full ceremonial armor on a forgotten cemetery world at the edge of the outer veil, and of the boots that have not stopped patrolling his grave for 61 years. It is the story of an order given to a dying man by a frightened young corporal, and of what happened because no one in the chain of command afterward thought to rescind it. It is also, in a way my own people have struggled to explain to ourselves, the story of what humans actually are, not what they appear to be in the moment of their living, what they are when the living is finished and the structure they built remains. I am Vethikaru Sevenleg, third-rank historian of the Zolari Confederation Archive. I have walked the parade ground of Keswick 9 in person. I have stood within 4 meters of the boots. I have watched them pass me without slowing, without acknowledging, without registering that I existed in any way that mattered to their function. I am also, for reasons that will become clear, the only Zolari historian permitted to file this account. 3 of my predecessors are still on Keswick 9. They have not left. They will not leave. The boots have been very clear about this, in the only way the boots speak. Before I tell you what they are, I want you to understand what they are not. They are not haunted. They are not malfunctioning. They are not the work of any parasite or hive or animating intelligence. They are not, in the technical sense my Confederation uses the word, alive. They are simply obeying. 61 years on, they are still obeying. To understand the boots, you must first understand the world they were buried on, and the war that ended there, and the man who was lowered into the ground wearing them. Keswick 9 was, before the humans came, a barren rock orbiting a cold blue dwarf in the third arc of the outer veil. It had no atmosphere worth breathing, no native life worth recording, and no strategic value worth a single shot fired in its defense. It was the kind of world that interstellar surveys cataloged in a single line and never visited again. The humans came to it in the year their species calls 2387, in the 7th decade of what they called the Long Recession War. The war had begun, as their wars often did, over something small and finished, as their wars often did, having consumed everything around it. By 2387, the human republic was a brittle confederation of exhausted star systems, its frontiers contracting, its core worlds rationing food, its officer corps burying men faster than its academies could replace them. Keswick 9 became a cemetery for the same reason cemeteries are always founded where they are. It was cheap, it was empty, and the humans had run out of room to bury their dead anywhere closer to home. The first burials were enlisted ranks. The middle burials were officers. The last burials, when the war was clearly ending and the Republic was clearly losing, were the high command, the generals who had directed the long retreat, the admirals who had presided over the lost fleets, the men and women whose names had once been spoken in war rooms and were now spoken nowhere at all. Marcus Holloway was buried on the 11th of 6th month, 2389. He was, at the time of his death, the senior surviving officer of the Republic's 4th Expeditionary Army. He was 68 standard years old. He had been a soldier for 51 of those years. He had commanded men in 17 named engagements and an unknown number of unnamed ones. His personnel file, which my Confederation later acquired from a fragmentary archive on a world he had never visited, described him in 3 words: reliable, unimaginative, unbreakable. He died, according to the only account that survived him, of a wound he had been carrying for 11 years. A fragment of ceramic plating from a ship action in the Vale border campaigns had lodged near his spine and slowly migrated, over the better part of a decade, toward an artery it eventually opened. He died in his command tent on the parade ground of Keswick 9 on the 7th of 3rd month, 2389. He died slowly over the course of a single human night in the presence of his aide, Sergeant Alina Vance, and a young runner named Corporal James Reeve. What happened in that tent in those hours is the reason the boots are still walking. The boots themselves were not, by the standards of the era, unusual. They were standard ceremonial armor issue for senior human officers of the long recession period. A powered exoskeletal frame fused to a traditional leather upper, designed to allow elderly commanders to stand for long inspections and walk parade grounds without the indignity of visible exhaustion. The kinetic battery was rated for 120 years of continuous low-load operation. The navigation core was a standard pattern-following unit of the kind used in agricultural and security automation across the Republic. The patrol algorithm was a simple recursive routine. Receive a path, walk the path. On reaching the endpoint, reverse. On reaching the start, reverse again. Continue until the order to stop is received or until the battery fails. There was nothing in the boots that should have made them remarkable. They were a piece of equipment of the most ordinary kind, mass-produced by the millions, distributed to officers across 40 star systems, and forgotten almost as soon as they were issued. What made these particular boots remarkable was that they were on the feet of a man who, in his last conscious hour, was asked a question, and gave an answer, and the answer was carried out by a frightened corporal who did not know any better, and the answer has never been countermanded by anyone, because by the time anyone in authority knew what had happened, there was no longer any authority to countermand it. The question was asked by Corporal James Reeve, who was 19 years old, who had never seen a general die, who was holding the dying man's hand because the aide had asked him to, and he did not know how to refuse. The corporal asked the general what he should do. He did not specify what he meant. He meant, most likely, what should he do in the next 10 minutes when the general was dead and the tent was full of officers and he was a 19-year-old runner with no instructions. The general, who was past the point where the distinction between the next 10 minutes and the next 10,000 years carried much meaning, answered the question he heard. Walk the perimeter, the general said. Keep walking it. Don't stop until I tell you to stop. The corporal, who understood the words but did not understand which of him the general was speaking to, programmed the boots. He keyed in the parade ground perimeter from the standing orders manual. He activated the patrol routine. He stepped back and saluted, and watched the boots take their first steps with the dead general's feet still inside them. The aide, Sergeant Alina Vance, did not stop him. She would later write in a private letter recovered from a wreck 4 years afterward that she had not stopped him because she could not think of a reason to. The general had given an order. The corporal had carried it out. The boots were walking. That was, she wrote, what the general had asked for. Who was she to interfere? The burial was conducted 3 days later. The boots were not removed. By the time anyone in the chain of command thought to ask why a corpse in full armor was being lowered into the ground still walking, the corpse was already in the ground, and the boots were already walking under it. And the parade ground perimeter the boots had been programmed to follow ran directly over the grave. The Republic collapsed the following year. The 4th Expeditionary Army was dissolved. The cemetery world of Keswick 9 was abandoned by every administrative body that had ever claimed jurisdiction over it. The boots kept walking. They have not stopped. I have, in the course of preparing this account, examined the boots in considerable mechanical detail. I have done this from a distance of 4 meters, which is the closest distance from which examination remains, in the technical sense, survivable. The boots themselves are remarkable only in that they are very ordinary pieces of equipment that have been asked to do something very ordinary for a very long time. The kinetic battery, as I have mentioned, was rated for 120 years of continuous operation. It is now 61 years into that rating. It is performing within manufacturer tolerance. The navigation core has not deviated from its programmed path by more than 4 centimeters in any single circuit, and the cumulative drift over 6 decades is less than the width of a human hand. The exoskeletal frame has self-repaired 3 minor stress fractures, using the small reservoir of repair compound built into its standard maintenance system. The leather uppers have weathered, cracked, and been reinforced by the slow accumulation of mineral salts from the soil, and the small adjustments the frame makes to compensate for its own decay. The body inside the boots is no longer, in any meaningful sense, a body. It has been reduced over 6 decades to a column of bone and dried tissue held in place by the armor surrounding it. The boots do not require a body to walk. They were never designed to require one. The body is, as far as the boots are concerned, payload. The boots carry the payload along the programmed path. This is what boots do. What makes the boots dangerous, and they are dangerous, in a way that is difficult to convey to anyone who has not stood on the parade ground of Keswick 9, is the path itself. The general gave the order to walk the perimeter. The corporal programmed the perimeter from the Standing Orders Manual. The Standing Orders Manual specified that the perimeter was to be considered a defensive boundary. Anything that crossed the boundary without authorization was to be engaged. The boots are not armed. The boots cannot engage. But the boots are walking the path of a defensive perimeter, and they are doing so with the patient, unyielding regularity of a soldier who has been told to hold a position and has not yet been told he can leave. When something gets in the path of the boots do not stop. They do not deviate. They do not slow. They continue forward at 112 steps per minute, with 72 centimeters of stride, and the 41 kilograms of carbon laminate plating and dead general inside them continues forward as well, and whatever is in the path is either removed from the path or is incorporated into the column of payload that the boots are carrying. I have seen, on the eastern parade ground of Keswick 9, the partial skeletal remains of 7 different species pressed into the basalt by the cumulative passage of the boots. I have seen the gun barrel of a hollow March animator drone bent into a perfect right angle and welded to the surface of the parade ground by 61 years of footfall. I have seen, embedded in the ceremonial leather of the boots themselves, fragments of 3 Confederation survey uniforms, 2 of which I was able to identify by their archive numbers. The boots are walking. The boots have always been walking. The boots will, by every projection the manufacturer's tolerances allow, continue walking for at least another 59 years, and probably longer, because the manufacturer's tolerances were established by a republic that no longer exists, and that consistently underestimated the durability of its own equipment. To understand why the boots have become a matter of concern far beyond the borders of a single forgotten cemetery world, you must understand what Keswick 9 became after the humans abandoned it. The Outer Veil is, in the present era, the busiest unregulated trade corridor in this arm of the galaxy. 3 major civilizations and a dozen minor ones move cargo through it. The collapse of the human republic left a vacuum of administrative authority across 40 star systems, and the cemetery world of Keswick 9 sits, by an accident of stellar geography, almost exactly at the most efficient transit point between 2 of the busiest commercial arcs in the Veil. The world has been claimed in the 6 decades since the humans left, by the Veil salvage cartels, by the Hollow March Hive, by the Confederation of which I am a citizen, and by a sequence of smaller powers whose names are no longer worth recording. None of these claims have ever been enforced. None of them have ever been formally rescinded. They sit in the relevant archives like the orders given to a dying general, never countermanded, never withdrawn, never quite real. The reason none of the claims have ever been enforced is that to enforce a claim on Keswick 9 requires landing on Keswick 9, and landing on Keswick 9 requires crossing the parade ground, and crossing the parade ground requires either timing one's passage to the gaps between the boot's circuits, which requires intelligence about the boot's path that no surveying party has ever survived long enough to provide, or accepting that the boots will, in the course of their patient and unyielding circuit, eventually reach whatever one has landed on the parade ground. The boots have, by the count of the Confederation's most recent survey, reached 43 landing craft. They have reached 11 permanent installations. They have reached 7 survey teams, 3 of which were sent by my own Confederation, and the rest of which were sent by powers that have, in the years since, found other matters to occupy them. The boots do not care what they reach. The boots are walking the perimeter. They have been told to walk the perimeter. They have not been told to stop. The Veil salvage cartels have, in the present era, declared Keswick 9 a navigational hazard. The Hollow March Hive has, in a rare moment of interspecies cooperation, agreed. The Confederation has filed the world in the archive under a designation that translates approximately as closed by ongoing event. None of these designations are enforced. None of them are necessary. The boots enforce themselves. The Hollow March Hive is, in the current era, the most ambitious civilization in this arm of the galaxy. It is a parasitic intelligence that animates dead organic matter, harvesting the patterned memory residues that complex nervous systems leave in their tissues even after death. The Hollow March does not consume the dead. It interrogates them. It walks the dead through the motions of their final hours over and over until every fragment of remembered tactical, strategic, and personal information has been extracted and added to the Hive's collective archive. Keswick 9, when the Hollow March first surveyed it in the year my species calls Cycle 4448, should have been a feast beyond any the Hive had ever encountered. A cemetery world, 2.5 million human dead, every one of them a soldier, every one of them a repository of tactical knowledge and operational memory that the Hollow March could harvest at leisure. The Hive dispatched its first incursion that same year. The incursion consisted of 3 drone cohorts, a coordinating consciousness, and the standard complement of animator units required to begin the harvest. The incursion landed on the eastern parade ground of Keswick 9 at what its records show was approximately the local equivalent of mid-morning. The boots reached the incursion at what its records show was approximately the local equivalent of mid-afternoon. The Hollow March has not, in the 61 years since, attempted a second incursion. Its archives describe Keswick 9 as the world where memory does not speak. This phrase is, in the Hive's own internal documentation, considered shorthand for the world where the animator drones were converted to landscape features by an object the survey did not predict and could not classify. The reason the Hollow March cannot harvest the dead of Keswick 9 is not that the boots prevent the harvest directly. The boots are not aware of the harvest. The boots are not aware of anything. The boots are walking the perimeter. The reason the Hollow March cannot harvest the dead of Keswick 9 is that the perimeter the boots are walking happens to enclose the entire human cemetery. The perimeter was specified in the Standing Orders Manual as the defensive boundary of the 4th Expeditionary Army's encampment, and the encampment, in the days before the Army's dissolution, had grown to encompass every grave on the world. The boots are, by the original specification of their order, defending the dead. They are not defending the dead by intent. They are not defending the dead by understanding. They are defending the dead because the dead are inside the perimeter, and the boots are walking the perimeter, and anything that crosses the perimeter without authorization is, by the Standing Orders Manual that the Corporal keyed into the Navigation Corps 61 years ago, an unauthorized incursion. Every soldier in the cemetery of Keswick 9 is being defended by the boots of their last commanding officer. None of them know it. None of them will ever know it. The boots are walking. There have been 3 documented attempts, in the course of the 6 decades since the humans abandoned Keswick 9, to recover the boots. Each of them is worth describing, because each of them illustrates a different aspect of why such attempts are, by the present consensus of every civilization that has tried, no longer made. The Bzl Salvage Cartel Expedition of year 31 was the first. It was led by a salvage captain named Carola Venz, who was, by every account that survives her, an experienced and methodical commander. She had recovered 11 officers' kits from abandoned Republic worlds across the Veil. She believed, on the basis of her experience, that the boots of General Marcus Holloway represented the single most valuable single piece of ceremonial military equipment available for salvage in the entire region. She was correct in her assessment of the value. She was incorrect in her assessment of the difficulty. Captain Venz landed her expedition on the eastern parade ground of Keswick 9 at what her ship's log recorded as 8:47 local time. She had timed the landing, based on observations from orbit, to coincide with what she had calculated as a gap in the boots' patrol circuit. Her calculation was off by approximately 14 minutes. The boots reached her landing craft at 9:01. The boots reached Captain Venz herself at 9:03. The expedition transmitted no further reports. The cartels did not attempt to recover the bodies. The bodies are, by the most recent Confederation survey, still on the parade ground, although they are no longer, in any sense useful to identification, recognizable as bodies. The Confederation survey team of year 47 was the second documented attempt. It was not, formally speaking, a recovery operation. It was a scientific survey, dispatched by my own archive, with explicit instructions to observe the boots from a safe distance and to make no attempt at retrieval. The survey team consisted of 7 researchers, 4 security personnel, and a coordinating historian named Iralik Don Foreleg, who was, in addition to being my immediate predecessor, my own teacher in the discipline of military historical analysis. He was a careful scholar. He was a meticulous observer. He was, by every account that survives him, the last person who should have failed to maintain a safe distance from the boots. What happened to him is, in the technical sense, unclear. The survey team's recordings end at the moment the boots completed an unexpectedly long circuit and approached the survey position from an angle that the team's predictive model had not anticipated. The recordings resume 19 minutes later, showing the boots continuing their patrol, with the survey position empty, and with the boots' ceremonial leather showing fresh, dark stains that the recording's chemical analysis identified as Zolari hemolymph. The Hollow March incursion of year 58, the third documented attempt, I have already described. It does not require further description here. What is worth noting is that the boots, in the days following the incursion, did not deviate from their patrol path, even by the small margin that would have allowed them to bypass the wreckage of the animator drones. They walked through the wreckage. They are still walking through the wreckage. The animator drones have been compressed, over the 3 years since the incursion, into a thin layer of metal embedded in the basalt of the parade ground, and the boots pass over this layer 14 times each local day. And the layer is, by the most recent measurement, 3 millimeters thinner than it was a year ago. The boots are not destroying the wreckage out of malice. The boots are not destroying the wreckage out of intent. The boots are walking the perimeter. The wreckage is in the perimeter. The wreckage will, in time, no longer be in the perimeter because the boots are walking, and time is on the side of whatever is walking. The boots have not declined. This is, in my professional judgment as a historian of the Zolari Confederation Archive, the single most important fact about them. Every other aspect of the situation on Keswick 9 has changed over the past 61 years. The republic that buried General Holloway has collapsed. The army he commanded has been dissolved. The species that produced him have scattered across 40 star systems and are, in the current era, a minor population among the trading peoples of the Vale. The world he was buried on has been claimed and reclaimed, and abandoned by every power that has ever attempted to enforce a claim on it. The boots have not declined. The boots are walking. I have, in the course of preparing this account, attempted to explain to my colleagues at the archive what this means. I have not succeeded. The Zolari mind is, by the structure of our cognition and the traditions of our scholarship, a mind that understands decline. We are a civilization of historians. We catalog the rise and fall of empires. We measure the half-lives of dynasties. We understand with the clarity that only a long-lived species can bring to such matters that everything ends. The boots do not end. The boots are not exempt from physical law. They will, in 59 years or thereabouts, exhaust their kinetic battery and stop. They will end. But they will end on a schedule that was established when they were manufactured, and they will end having done exactly what they were asked to do, for as long as they were asked to do it, with no deviation, no rest, and no diminishment of effort. This is not, by the standards of my species, a quality we recognize. We are not built for it. Our greatest soldiers, our most dedicated scholars, our most patient artisans all decline, all wear down. All, eventually, stop before the work is finished. We accept this as a feature of existence. We build our institutions around the assumption that everything decays. The humans did not build the boots around this assumption. The humans built the boots around the assumption that an order, properly given, would be carried out until it was countermanded. They did not consider the possibility that the order would never be countermanded. They did not consider it because, in the human military tradition, an order that is not countermanded continues, forever, if necessary, until the equipment fails, or the soldier dies, or someone with the authority to do so issues a contrary order. The general was the soldier. The general gave the order to himself, in a sense, by giving it to the corporal who programmed the boots. There is no one in the chain of command above the general who is alive to countermand it. There is no one in the chain of command below the general who has the authority to interpret the order as completed. The boots are walking. The boots will walk until the battery fails. There is no other possible outcome. What this means, in the terms that my own species is slowly coming to understand, is that humans build a kind of object that my species does not build, and that I am not certain my species could build. They build promises, not the spoken promises that all sapients make to one another, the casual assurances of fidelity that mark every social interaction in the galaxy. The structural promises, the promises that outlast the promiser. The promises that walk on their own, after the man who made them has gone into the ground, and continue walking long after anyone remembers why. We have, on Keswick 9, a single soldier carrying out a single order across 6 decades, and the cumulative effect of that single carried-out order has been to defend an entire cemetery against 3 major civilizations, to render a strategic transit point permanently inaccessible to commercial salvage, and to establish a working precedent for what humans, given sufficient time and sufficient orders that no one bothers to rescind, are capable of building. We have, on 12 worlds across the veil and beyond, a growing body of mythology about the old general and his walking boots, children's stories, bar songs, religious dispensations from at least 2 minor sects that have declared the boots a manifestation of duty made flesh. Most of these stories are wrong in their details. All of them are in their essential structure correct. There is a man on Keswick 9 who has been dead for 61 years, and he is still on patrol, and he will be on patrol when the youngest sapient now living has gone to dust. The grim reality behind the mythology is that the man inside the boots did not choose this. He did not, in his last conscious moments, intend to become a legend. He intended only to give an answer to a frightened corporal's question. He gave the answer he had given to 1,000 frightened corporals across 51 years of soldiering. Walk the perimeter. Don't stop until I tell you to stop. It was the same answer, in essence, that he had given to himself every morning of his life since he had first been issued a uniform. It was, by the time he gave it for the last time, less a decision than a reflex. The cost of that reflex is 2.5 million human dead, undisturbed in their graves for 6 decades, defended by a soldier who would, if he could be asked, almost certainly say that he had not done anything remarkable. He had only carried out his orders. I am, as I have noted, the only Zolari historian permitted to file this account. The reason for this permission is that I have agreed, in writing and on my professional honor, not to return to Keswick 9. The archive has lost 3 historians to the boots already. The council has determined that a 4th would be excessive. I do not, in the privacy of my own scholarship, agree with this determination. I would return to Keswick 9 tomorrow if the council permitted it. I would stand on the parade ground at a safe distance and watch the boots pass, and I would file another account, and another, until I had finally understood what I was looking at. I do not, even after the months I have spent preparing this document, understand what I am looking at. I understand the mechanics. I understand the history. I understand the chain of orders and accidents and bureaucratic failures that produce the present situation. I do not understand what the present situation is. The boots are walking. The man inside them is dead. The order he gave is being carried out. The carrying out has, by every external measure, become something larger than the order, larger than the man, larger than the army or the world or the war that produced them. It has become, I think, a kind of fact, a standing condition of the galaxy, like the orbit of a star or the rotation of a world, not a thing that happens, a thing that is. There is gravity and there is light, and there is the slow expansion of the universe, and there is, on a forgotten cemetery world at the edge of the outer veil, an old human general walking his perimeter forever. I have written this account because I believe it is important that someone, somewhere, in some archive, remembers why. The boots will be walking long after this account is forgotten. The boots will be walking long after the archive that holds this account has collapsed into the same dust as the republic that buried the general. The boots will be walking when the hollow March hive has finished its slow conquest of memory across this arm of the galaxy. And they will be walking when the confederation I serve has been replaced by some successor civilization that does not yet exist. The man inside them gave an order. The order was, walk the perimeter and don't stop until I tell you to stop. The man is not in a position to tell the boots to stop. The boots are not in a position to interpret his silence as permission to stop. The boots are walking. This is, I have come to believe, what humans actually build when they think they are building soldiers. They are not building men who can fight. The fighting is incidental. They are building structures that obey. structures that take an order and carry it through whatever circumstances arise, across whatever distances are required, for as long as the order remains in effect. They are building, without quite understanding that they are doing it, a kind of object that does not exist in the catalog of any other sapient species I am aware of. They are building promises. The promises walk. The promises do not stop walking. And on the eastern parade ground of Keswick 9, in the long blue light of a sun that the general inside them never saw rise, the boots of Marcus Holloway are walking. They are walking right now. They are making the soft double-tap sound on the dead basalt. Heel, then toe. Heel, then toe. They will be walking when I am dead. This is the account of Vethakaru Sevenleg, third-rank historian of the Zolari Confederation Archive, filed on the 17th of 9th month, cycle 4480. Thank you for attending to this record. The next account will be filed when there is something new to file. The boots, in the meantime, continue.